The last time you got sick, you reached for a small pill. The fever broke. The pain faded. You barely thought about it. For 99% of human history, there was no pill. There was no doctor, no hospital, no pharmacy. When you got sick, there were only two outcomes: you healed or you died. And yet your ancestors were not helpless. What they did to survive illness, drilling holes in living skulls, chewing the raw source of aspirin, performing surgery with no way to stop the pain, is one of the most astonishing stories in our history, because some of it actually worked. Start with the most disturbing fact in the history of medicine. Our ancestors performed brain surgery, and the patients lived. The procedure is called trepanation, drilling or scraping a hole through the skull of a living person. It sounds like a death sentence, it sounds like torture, but it is one of the oldest surgeries we know of, found on every inhabited continent, going back at least 7,000 years, and in some cases far longer. Here is the part nobody expects. Archaeologists can tell whether the patient survived because living bone heals. It grows smooth and rounded around the edge of the hole. And when researchers examine trepanned skulls from the Stone Age, a large share of them, in some sites, the majority, show that healing. The patient lived, sometimes for years. Sometimes they were trepanned more than once. These were not random acts of violence. Someone cut into a conscious human skull, and that human walked away and recovered, with no anesthetic, no antibiotics, no understanding of germs at all. So what else were they capable of? Long before chemistry, your ancestors had a pharmacy. It was the forest, and they knew it intimately. Consider willow bark. For thousands of years, cultures across the world chewed it or brewed it to bring down fevers and dull pain. They had no idea why it worked, but willow bark contains a compound called salicin. In 1899, a chemical cousin of that exact compound was bottled and sold under a new name: aspirin. The painkiller in your medicine cabinet is a refined version of a tree your ancestors were chewing in the Stone Age. It was not the only one. Honey was packed onto wounds across the ancient world, and we now know honey is genuinely antibacterial. It draws water out of bacteria and kills them. The mold that produces penicillin grows on damp bread, and several ancient cultures pressed moldy bread onto infections, stumbling onto the principle of the antibiotic thousands of years before we understood it. Every plant that worked was remembered and passed down. Everyone that didn't was forgotten. It was trial and error, written in human lives across 10,000 years. We even have a patient. His name is Otzi, a man who died in the Alps around 5,300 years ago and was frozen so perfectly that we can read his medical history today. Otzi was not well. Scientists found that he suffered from worn joints, intestinal parasites, and hardened arteries. And across his body, 61 of them were tattoos. But these tattoos were not decoration. They were placed almost exactly on the points where his body would have hurt: his lower back, his knees, his ankles. Many of them sit on what traditional medicine would centuries later call acupuncture points. 5,000 years ago, someone was treating this man's chronic pain with a therapy we thought was invented far later, somewhere else entirely. Otzi was carrying a medical kit in his own skin. But the most powerful ancient medicine was not a plant or a procedure. It was each other. In Shanidar cave in Iraq, archaeologists found the skeleton of a Neanderthal man who lived around 50,000 years ago. He was, by any measure, a catastrophe of injuries. He was blind in one eye. His arm was withered and likely amputated. He had a crushed foot and walked with a severe limp. Injuries like his should have killed him quickly in the harsh Ice Age world. They didn't. He lived for years that way, and he could only have done that if others fed him, protected him, and carried him when he could not keep up. A blind, one-armed, crippled man cannot survive a single hard winter alone. His survival is physical proof of something profound. Tens of thousands of years ago, a different species of human looked at someone who could give nothing back, and kept him alive anyway. That is the oldest medicine there is. Not the herb, not the blade, the decision not to leave someone behind. Today, you live inside a miracle so complete you have stopped seeing it. A fever that would have killed your great-great-grandmother is now an inconvenience you treat between meetings. An infection that meant certain death for 1,000 generations now clears in a week of pills. But every piece of that miracle was built on the bodies of people who came before. The willow chewers, the bone setters, the ones who drilled into skulls and learned slowly, agonizingly, what kept a patient alive. Modern medicine did not appear from nowhere. It is the accumulated, blood-soaked knowledge of 10,000 years of humans refusing to simply accept that the sick must die. Somewhere, 7,000 years ago, a healer pressed a sharpened stone to the skull of a conscious, frightened human being and began carefully to cut. We don't know if they understood what they were doing. We only know that the patient lived, the bone healed, and the knowledge of how somehow was passed to the next pair of hands, and the next, across a span of time almost too long to imagine. You are the end of that chain. Every time you swallow a pill without a thought, you are cashing in 10,000 years of human courage, suffering, and stubborn, desperate love. Your ancestors could not save everyone. Most of the time, they could not save anyone, but they never stopped trying. And the pill in your hand is what they were reaching for the whole time.